I ran, thinking it was just a game, but when her hand caught my shirt, and she whispered, "Stop running. I like catching you," everything changed. The evening air was soft and warm, the kind that made the ordinary seem comfortable and familiar. I was at my best friend's house, the kind of visit that should have been simple, casual, a few laughs, maybe some snacks, and the easy rhythm of friendship. I had known him for years, and that meant I knew this house like the back of my hand, the creak of the stairs, the faded rug in the living room, the faint scent of old wood mingling with coffee. But tonight, the ordinary didn't feel quite ordinary. She was there, my best friend's sister. And somehow, she always had a way of making the room feel different. She moved with the kind of grace that wasn't flashy or deliberate, but impossible to ignore. Her presence had this quiet authority, a gentle confidence that made me instantly aware of the contrast between her and the familiar corners of this house. She smiled at me as I stepped into the room, just the kind of smile that felt knowing, almost teasing, like she could see the thoughts I hadn't even admitted to myself. Her hair caught the light as she turned to pour herself a glass of water, each movement fluid, unhurried. The faint scent of her perfume, something soft, slightly floral, comforting, lingered in the air long after she had moved past. I felt it without wanting to, a subtle pull I couldn't name. I realized I was watching her, more closely than I should, noticing the tilt of her head as she laughed at my friend's joke, the way her fingers brushed her hair behind her ear, and the small pause she took before meeting my eyes again. That pause, so brief it could have been nothing, made my chest tighten just a little. We had always been familiar. I'd seen her countless times before, joked with her, teased her, maybe even rolled my eyes at some of her sharper remarks. But tonight there was something different. A quiet tension hung in the air, subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable if you paid attention. Every glance lingered a heartbeat longer. Every shared laugh carried a trace of something else, a hint that the boundaries of friendship were shifting, just slightly, in ways either of us could, or maybe wanted to, ignore. I caught myself wondering if she noticed too, if she felt it in the little ways our hands brushed as she passed by, or in the way she leaned slightly closer than necessary when she spoke. It was a strange combination of comfort and anticipation, the ease of familiarity mixed with the thrill of something unspoken, something waiting. And in that moment I realized, tonight wouldn't be just another casual visit. Something had changed. The way she looked at me, the subtle warmth in her presence, and that quiet, magnetic confidence, it all whispered that whatever was about to happen, it would start here, in the familiar space of my best friend's home, and the ordinary made extraordinary by her simple presence. The evening had settled into a rhythm of laughter and light conversation when I felt a sudden impulse to move, to dash away from the safe familiarity of the living room. Maybe it was the warmth of the night, the comfortable glow of the lamps, or maybe it was the subtle awareness of her presence that made my legs itch to move. I teased my best friend, a playful nudge and a joking warning. "Catch me if you can." And before I knew it, I was sprinting toward the backyard, the soft grass muffling my steps. I didn't expect her to follow. She was usually poised, composed, the kind of person who didn't indulge in childish games. And yet, almost instantly, I felt the faint rush of air behind me and then, a firm, sudden grip. My shirt tugged backward, pulling me just enough to halt my momentum. "Stop running," she said, her voice calm but carrying a playful undertone that made my chest tighten. "I like catching you." It was the kind of line that could have been casual, even joking, but the way she said it, the warmth in her tone, made it feel deliberate, meaningful. I froze, blinking down at her. She looked up at me, eyes steady and knowing, a small, mischievous smile tugging at her lips. There was no shame, no embarrassment, only that quiet confidence that always seemed to wrap around her, unspoken but undeniable. Her fingers were curled lightly around the fabric of my shirt, warm against my skin. The pressure was gentle but firm, a physical insistence that mirrored the unspoken tension building between us. I could feel her hand brushing against my chest with every subtle shift, the proximity sending an unexpected ripple through me. Heart racing, I realized how alive this moment felt, the thrill of being caught, not by a playful hand, but by someone I hadn't quite understood I wanted to notice me this way. Her laugh, soft and teasing, followed me as I stopped moving, and I found myself smiling despite the sudden flutter in my chest. She stepped closer, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the evening air, the warmth of her body radiating in a way that was both comforting and electrifying. I was struck by the quiet intimacy of it all, not forced, not rushed, but natural, as if the world had paused to let this small connection speak volumes. I wanted to speak, to say something clever or flustered, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, aware of every subtle movement, her slight lean, the tilt of her head, the brush of her fingers against mine. Even the gentle tug of her hand held meaning, a promise of attention, of closeness. For a moment, I realized that this playful chase was no longer about running or teasing. It was about presence, about noticing each other in a way that transcended the casual comfort of familiarity. And somewhere beneath the laughter and the light-hearted game, a spark had ignited, quiet, insistent, and entirely impossible to ignore. The chase had begun. Not just across the yard, but between us, in the delicate, unspoken territory where friendship began to hint at something more. After the playful chase, the laughter and light-hearted teasing had given way to a quieter rhythm. The evening had softened into a gentler pace. Only the hum of the ceiling fan and the distant sounds of the neighborhood beyond the backyard fence filled the air. Somehow, the world outside had faded, leaving just the two of us in a shared space that felt charged with subtle tension. We found ourselves alone in the kitchen. My best friend had stepped out to make a call, leaving the two of us with the soft clink of glasses and the faint aroma of freshly brewed tea. I was washing a dish when I became acutely aware of her presence behind me. She moved closer, not intentionally it seemed, but in a way that left her lingering near the counter. Her gaze caught mine in the mirror above the sink, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. There was something about the way she looked at me, steady, unhurried, with an intensity that made my chest tighten. It wasn't bold or forward, but quietly observant, as if she were seeing something in me that I hadn't even fully acknowledged myself. I noticed the subtle ways her posture shifted, shoulders relaxed, leaning slightly forward, as though drawn toward me, even unconsciously. My mind tried to process it, but it stumbled over the unfamiliarity of these feelings. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for a cup, and the contact was brief, almost accidental, but it was enough. A shiver ran through me at the warmth of her skin, the soft pressure that lingered a fraction longer than necessary. I realized I was holding my breath, savoring the fleeting intimacy. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her hand linger near mine just a moment longer, giving weight to the quiet connection. We began talking, first about nothing in particular, small jokes, the passing weather, shared memories, but every word seemed to carry more meaning than usual. Her laughter was a low, melodic sound that vibrated in the space between us. And every now and then, our eyes would meet across the counter, lingering slightly longer than politeness demanded, until I felt an almost dizzying pull toward her. The room was warm, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the subtle steam from the tea. I noticed the way the light caught her hair, the gentle curve of her cheek as she tilted her head, and the softness in her eyes that spoke of quiet curiosity and an unspoken question. I was acutely aware of the proximity of her body, the way her presence filled the small kitchen with something intimate and tender. I realized then that this was more than a casual interaction. The playful chase had revealed something underneath, a new awareness, a fragile thread of desire, unspoken but undeniably present. Every gesture, every glance, every accidental brush of her hand seemed to carry a weight that was both exhilarating and terrifying. And as she handed me the cup of tea, her fingers lightly grazing mine once more, I felt it clearly, the rules of familiarity had shifted. The space between us was charged with a tension neither of us had fully named, yet both could feel. In that quiet moment, standing side by side, the world outside ceased to matter. We were discovering each other slowly, intentionally, in ways that made every glance, every gesture, every unspoken word feel like a revelation. The evening stretched on, soft and quiet, the kind of night that makes every sound sharper and every glance linger longer than usual. I found myself retreating to the small balcony at the back of the house, the faint city lights sparkling beyond the fence. The cool breeze brushed against my face, stirring thoughts I hadn't dared to voice. And then she appeared, as though drawn to the same quiet solitude. She leaned lightly against the railing, the glow from the nearby porch light highlighting the gentle curve of her cheek and the calm, steady gaze she fixed on the horizon. For a moment neither of us spoke. The silence was comfortable, yet charged. I could feel the weight of all the unspoken things, the playful teasing, the stolen glances, the lingering touches that had set my heart a little off balance. And as I looked at her, something inside me shifted. I realized that I wasn't just noticing her presence anymore. I was noticing her entirely. The warmth of her hand, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the quiet intensity of her eyes, it all felt like a silent confession, one that mirrored the thoughts I had tried to suppress. "I never realized how much I notice you," I said finally, my voice low and hesitant, almost swallowed by the night. She turned her head slightly, meeting my gaze, a small, understanding smile forming on her lips. She didn't respond immediately, but the subtle shift in her posture, the way her hand lingered on the railing near mine, told me she understood. I wanted to speak more, to explain the swirl of emotions that had grown inside me over the past hours, the curiosity, the hesitation, the undeniable pull toward her, but the words felt fragile, inadequate. Instead, I let my eyes do the talking, searching hers for any hint of what she felt, the unspoken question hanging between us: did she feel the same? She exhaled softly, a quiet sound that carried more meaning than words ever could. "I've been thinking about this," she said, her tone gentle but deliberate. "About how things feel when we're together. It's different." Her words were careful, deliberate, as if she were testing the ground, probing the delicate thread that had started to form between us. The breeze carried the faint scent of her perfume, mingling with the night air, grounding me in the reality of her presence, in the intimacy of this shared moment. Her vulnerability was subtle but undeniable. The slightest tremor in her fingers as they rested against the railing, the quick blink she gave when our eyes met too long, it all spoke volumes. And in that vulnerability, I saw an invitation, a quiet permission to acknowledge what had been growing between us. I wanted to step closer, to bridge the space between hesitation and honesty, but I paused, savoring the tension, the delicate balance between risk and reward. In that quiet balcony, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only her and me, the gentle weight of what was unspoken pressing against us, the realization that the playful chase, the lingering glances, the accidental touches, they had all been leading here. And for the first time, I let myself acknowledge it fully. I wanted more. The following afternoon, the house was quieter than usual. My best friend had gone out for an errand, leaving just her and me in the living room, sunlight spilling through the curtains in a soft, golden haze. We were sorting through a stack of old photo albums, laughing at memories of vacations, birthday parties, and moments that had seemed mundane at the time. It was comfortable, warm, but beneath the surface, a subtle tension had begun to thread through every shared glance, every brush of our hands as we reached for the same photograph. At one point, I shifted slightly to hand her a particularly funny photo, and she leaned in at the same moment, just slightly too close. Our arms brushed, the contact brief but electric. My heart jumped at the accidental intimacy, the warmth of her body so near, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the sunlight. She froze for a heartbeat too, and I realized she had felt it too, the unspoken charge that made the room feel smaller, yet infinitely more alive. We both laughed softly, a little awkwardly, the sound mingling with the quiet warmth of the room. But there was no pulling away, at least not immediately. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of the album, close enough that her fingers occasionally grazed mine. The simple, natural closeness carried an intensity that neither of us had fully acknowledged, but both could feel. I could sense her awareness, the subtle shift in her posture, as she leaned slightly closer while flipping through the pages. Every movement, small and unintentional, seemed designed to speak volumes without a single word. At one point I reached for a photo, and our hands touched again. I felt a shiver run through me, not from surprise, but from the quiet intimacy of the moment. Her hand lingered fractionally longer than necessary, a soft pressure that was impossible to ignore. Her eyes met mine, steady and calm, and in them, I saw an understanding that matched my own growing awareness. The teasing, playful side of our relationship had transformed into something quieter, more intense, something that neither dared name aloud but both recognized instantly. The moment stretched, heavy with anticipation, and I realized that the accidental closeness had created a space where nothing else mattered. I could feel the warmth of her presence, the gentle rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, the subtle rhythm of her heartbeat echoing in the stillness. And for a brief, suspended moment, I imagined leaning just slightly closer, letting the distance between us vanish entirely, but I hesitated, savoring the delicate tension. Finally she spoke, her voice soft and measured, almost a whisper. "I like being here with you." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a declaration, it was a simple truth, spoken with quiet honesty. And in that simple sentence, the distance between us seemed to shrink, the invisible barrier of hesitation thinning. I wanted to respond, to let her know I felt exactly the same, but words felt too clumsy for the intimacy of the moment. So I let my gaze linger, and she let hers meet mine. And in that suspended quiet, with accidental touches and shared breaths, the unspoken connection between us became undeniable, real, and beautifully alive. That evening, the house was bathed in the soft glow of golden hour sunlight filtering through the curtains. We found ourselves in the living room again, sitting side by side on the worn, comfortable couch. The quiet hum of the ceiling fan above, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, and the warmth of her presence beside me created an intimacy that felt natural and unforced. For a while, we just sat there, side by side, our hands resting close enough that a small shift could make them brush together. There was no rush, no urgency, only the unspoken acknowledgement of the bond that had been quietly growing over the past few days. I could feel her energy, calm yet vibrant, and I realized that this connection, subtle as it had begun, was far stronger than I had anticipated. Finally she spoke, her voice gentle but confident. "I know this might feel complicated," she said, glancing toward me but not quite meeting my eyes. "But I don't want to pretend there's nothing here." Her words were careful, deliberate, filled with an honesty that made my chest tighten. I nodded slowly, realizing that I had felt the same hesitation, the same uncertainty, but also the undeniable pull toward her that I could no longer ignore. I reached out, my fingers brushing hers lightly. The touch was soft, deliberate, grounding us in the moment. "I've been feeling it too," I admitted, my voice low. "I just didn't know how to say it without messing everything up." The confession felt fragile, yet somehow liberating, like finally letting a secret breathe in the open air. She smiled then, a mixture of relief and warmth, and leaned slightly closer. "I like how honest you are," she murmured, her words soft but weighted with meaning. The way her body angled toward mine, the gentle tilt of her head, and the subtle warmth radiating from her shoulder made the space between us feel smaller, more intimate. Every subtle gesture spoke of trust, of understanding, of the willingness to acknowledge feelings that had been carefully nurtured yet long ignored. We talked for what felt like hours, not about grand declarations or dramatic confessions, but about our emotions, our hesitations, and the gentle tension that had been building. Every laugh, every shared story, every glance that lingered a beat too long added layers to the intimacy between us. Her hand occasionally brushed mine, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally, and each contact was electric, reinforcing the connection we had both quietly admitted to feeling. By the end of the conversation, there was a sense of calm resolution. The age difference, the societal expectations, the questions of what this might mean, they still existed, yes, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. What mattered was the honesty, the trust, and the emotional closeness we had nurtured, carefully and deliberately, over time. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm, amber light across the room, I felt a quiet contentment. She was beside me, her presence comforting yet thrilling, familiar yet new. And in that shared silence, The unspoken understanding between us solidified. Whatever path lay ahead, we were stepping into it together, with honesty, trust, and the slow-burning warmth of something real. The evening had fallen into a soft, amber quiet. The sky outside the window had shifted from pale gold to dusky pink, and the first stars began to peek through, faint but steady. She and I lingered in the living room, either rushing to leave, either wanting the fragile comfort of the night to end. Every glance, every movement, seemed to carry the weight of the connection we had nurtured over days. Moments of laughter, teasing, lingering touches, and unspoken admissions. We decided to step outside for a short walk, down the quiet street near my best friend's home. The air was cool and gentle, brushing against our cheeks and carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers from nearby gardens. I felt her hand brush against mine as we walked, and without consciously thinking, our fingers intertwined. The touch was natural, easy, and yet it sent a warm ripple through me, a reminder of all the moments that had led to this simple act. We walked slowly, either of us needing words to fill the space. Her presence was enough, steady, calming, yet undeniably exciting. Every so often, our shoulders would lightly touch, or she would glance up at me, eyes soft and sparkling with a mixture of curiosity and affection. I caught myself smiling without realizing it, aware that my heart felt lighter, fuller, and strangely brave in her company. At a small park bench, we paused, letting the quiet settle around us. She leaned slightly closer, and I could feel the subtle warmth radiating from her shoulder. Her hand rested lightly on mine, gentle yet confident, a quiet affirmation of the bond between us. For a moment, all the uncertainty, the hesitation, and the unspoken questions melted away. There was only the present, the two of us, connected by touches, glances, and the growing intimacy that had been building from the very first playful chase. "Tonight feels different," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, carried by the gentle breeze. "Like things are finally right." Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight of sincerity and comfort. I nodded, feeling the truth in them, and allowed myself to lean just slightly closer. The space between us felt intentional, intimate, and entirely safe. As we sat together, our hands still entwined, I realized how far we had come, from playful teasing and lingering glances to honesty, vulnerability, and trust. The age difference, once a subtle concern, now felt inconsequential in the warmth of shared understanding. Every smile, every brush of skin, every soft laugh had led us to this quiet certainty. We belonged, in a way that was unforced, natural, and enduring. Finally, as the night deepened and the stars shimmered above, she rested her head lightly on my shoulder. I felt the weight of her presence, steady and reassuring, and wrapped an arm gently around her. The moment was simple, YouTube-safe, yet profoundly intimate. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was quiet, it was real, and it was exactly what both of us needed. And in that silence, I knew that this was only the beginning. We had found each other, slowly and deliberately, and the warmth of that connection would guide us forward. Hand in hand, heart in heart, we sat beneath the stars, together, content, and ready to explore the unspoken depth of what had blossomed between us.